So hello everybody and welcome. I'm Philippa Haynes.
And I'm Mark Lee. Welcome to another episode of the Accountant Success Secrets podcast. This is where we showcase and celebrate successful accountants who've been running their own practice for a good few years and whose stories can inspire and encourage other accountants in practice around the UK.
Yeah, indeed. We ask them to share their story, including the highs, the lows, and what they have learned on the way. Our aim is to provide some fundamental insights for you, our loyal listener. So if you would like to share your story in a similar way, please do get in touch with Mark or myself.
Indeed. Now, our podcast today is again supported by the Tax Advice Network. Their website exists to enable you to find exactly the right tax specialist whenever a client's tax issue, challenge or problem demands a second opinion, or when you want to avoid going beyond your level of competence and experience. It costs nothing to use the website, where you'll find tax experts addressing over 100 areas of tax. Just choose the advisor you want and contact them directly through the website. Simply visit taxadvicenetwork.co.uk to find out more.
Great. So today on our podcast, we are delighted to introduce Steve Price of BWP Inspire, an accountancy firm based in Manchester, into which he merged his previous practice, Price Accounting, which he started almost 20 years ago. Starting life as a CIMA management accountant, Steve has always been more interested in what the numbers actually mean for the future of the business rather than documenting the past. The practice's aim is to understand their clients' key figures, advise them how to delve into those figures, and strategically plan to grow their business and achieve the performance it needs to give the owners the funds for their life goals. So Steve's approach is based upon the fact that business goals only exist to fulfill personal goals, and I believe Steve will be able to tell us a lot more about this, about his own life. So welcome, Steve.
Is there anything else you'd like to add by way of intro?
No, I couldn't have put that better myself. That's very good. Good morning to you both.
I think it's your LinkedIn profile, so it's no wonder.
Yeah, it's like, whoo!
Yeah, the number of times we've done that and somebody said, no, that's not true anymore. And we go, but that's what it says on your LinkedIn profile. Anyway, as you know, we aim to keep the podcast around 30 minutes, and we do that by focusing the discussion around a few questions. So I'll start with a combination. What attracted you to start your own practice, and how did you go about doing that?
Okay, so I'd love to tell you about some whole strategic approach, as my LinkedIn profile would have you believe. But look, I fell into it. It was a lifestyle choice. Let me go back a few years before it to give you the context. Sure. I'm a CIMA accountant. I trained in industry. I started in industry, in the food production industry, where it was very nice but a little smelly. I was surrounded by pigs, quite literally. From there, I went into the role of systems analyst, very much included as a project team to implement financial systems into SMEs. And it was at that stage I made a lifestyle choice based around my family. I was running projects out of Birmingham, Leeds, wherever the client was, and I decided, as part of having young children coming into the family, that I wanted to be based much closer to home, and so I decided to open a practice. I soon realised after that for any CIMA accountant practice, what you need is some type of tax knowledge. So that wasn't something I counted for, but I got over that hurdle. And that was my third type of accountancy. And these days I spend most of my time more akin to a business coach than a practice accountant. I run as the role as MD, I run my practice, but the work I do, which is client facing, is all coaching and advisory based. So I fell into it from a professional point of view, but I made a very conscious lifestyle based decision. And I say that quite proudly, not with any shame at all, that I've shaped my career around and I'll go back to what you said in the introduction, Philippa, that my business goals have been centered around my personal goals first. And that's something that I talk to quite strongly with my clients about how they might shape their lives and businesses as well.
That's absolutely wonderful. I want to go back though. How did you start up the practice? Where did the clients come from? How did you attract clients to the original practice when you started 20 years ago?
So I was watching Lancashire versus Yorkshire cricket match. It was 50-50, I think, with a good pal of mine. And he said, "Steve, I'm fed up with my accountant. Why don't you do it?" And I said, "Well, I can't possibly do that. I'm a CIMA accountant. I wouldn't know where to start." So no, it seems to me that I've got a good mate who does accounts. He won't do me accounts, and I've got to put up with these other guys. And I don't understand them. I don't get them. Everything they do is matched with an invoice. I know that I'm against the clock when I speak to them. And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, I just can't help you. I'm a different type of accountant." Obviously, you've worked out the second half to this. I went home, sobered up, and had a good think about this. And I started in the way so many people start. I started doing the accounts for the friends I had who were running their own business. But here's what I learned at a very early stage. When you sit down with somebody who owns their own business and you talk to them about the numbers in that business, you're talking to them about things that impact on their life and their family. That is so much more impactful than sitting around the board table talking about decisions that impact a management team. At least it is for me. And so I didn't necessarily go in expecting to get that. But what I found was a job, a role that I absolutely loved it. It was wonderful because of that direct impact. And that was my start then, I guess, into practice accounts.
Awesome.
Yeah. Fantastic. What I want to just pick up on is because you talked quite specifically about it being a lifestyle choice, and obviously there was something around your kids and your family, but I also know that you have quite an interesting kind of wide-ranging interests. What was it specifically? What do you want to achieve with your business now, and what did you want to achieve then?
Yeah, so I guess what you're talking about there is I'm a very keen endurance athlete, and specifically Ironman, which I guess these days most people know. That takes quite a bit of time. You can't just go for a jog on a Friday after work and rock up at the start line of an Ironman. So I'm usually training something around 15 hours.
Yep.
And managing a family in the business as well. And I wasn't able to do this on day one. Don't get me wrong. I probably took steps backwards before I took steps forwards. But I had, let's call it a vision, shall we? We all know what a great vision is. I have a vision for the business. It's very, very strong. And I have a personal vision for myself. And I think some of the mastery which us accountants try and achieve is how we bring those together. Trying to bring 15 hours or whatever, and you know, I'm fortunate enough to race internationally. I was lucky enough to be in New Zealand in March, racing out there.
Wow.
A bucket list thing for me. Bringing these things together, the business and what you want to do as a person, it takes some effort, but there's the vision. That's what we do it for. Now, somebody else's vision could be completely different.
Yeah.
But we all know there are far too many accountants and business owners who are serving their business first before it serves them, and it's that change of that dynamic which is so important and is so at the center of how we try and work with our clients and the value that we try to bring.
Yeah. So take me back then, because you said, you know, obviously when you started up, it wasn't like that. You know, you obviously, like all of us, had to work pretty hard to get yourself established. So what have you learned over that sort of those years? Because obviously there's been a moment where the balance has started to shift. Just tell us a little bit about that, how you got to the point you are now.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll talk about a CIMA accountant coming into practice. You know, this is the only practice I've worked in. we have gone through a merger, so that's not quite technically correct. But still, my own practice is the only practice I've worked in. On a day one, that was a huge problem for me, you know, the imposter syndrome sort of context. With the benefit of hindsight and with the learning of so many years after, I now realize that has been my strength, my differentiator. I'm not clouded by anything else. I've always made free decisions, and I've been challenged at every stage to make those decisions. If you want me to be a little bit more specific, what I've learned, a key learning over the years, is to try and approach things from 3 different angles. And I think if you get all these 3 angles into each decision as an accountant, you're probably on the right track. So first of all, the problem. Never ignore the problem. There's always a problem. You just have to get to the core of it. And I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about there. We don't address symptoms. We need to get to the core. The second thing is the facts. Most commonly, that for us is the numbers. We have to be across the numbers. They are our tools at work. And thirdly, it's the people. And that's the key one. The one that's often most overlooked is the people. We have to personalize our message with the numbers. We have to bring empathy into it. And of course, that's the thing that will hopefully stop us being replaced by machine learning and AI. People bring the complexity into it. People bring the unpredictability into it. But if we bring those 3 things together, the problem, the facts, and the people, I think it's that approach that I've learned over the years. If we can do that, that's when we have the best value proposition towards our clients.
So now that you've only had your own firm to sort of experience, you said that is a benefit now. You see that, but maybe you didn't initially. What is the benefit of that, do you think?
Well, the reason I didn't see it initially was all I could see really was that I had to learn a load of tax. I'm not going to make any judgment on other fellow CIMA accountants, but we don't have a lot of that in our exams. And I had to do some cross training, which at the time was daunting, but of course we look back and I only benefited from it. But I'm talking about every other aspect of working in practice. Who's to say how we should address our clients, what services we should do? When I walk around any accounting conference, the key message is all about how do we advise our clients? How do we get hold of that holy grail that is advisory? Well, I'll be dead honest with you. I am more natural at advising clients and providing what we call advisory services than I am at compliance and statutory work, because it's always come natural. And forming the conversation around actually helping the clients so that they get some genuine value out of our insights has always fallen naturally to me. But of course, on day one, I didn't know that was a service. I didn't know that was something I could necessarily monetize, or at least how to monetize it. But now I do. Now I understand that is where the true value is. And to be honest, that is what clients are usually looking for from us. Of course,
you're absolutely right, Steve. And it's, in my experience, CIMA qualified accountants seem to take to that more than chartered certified ICAW qualified accountants. There seems to be something in the CIMA training that makes you better prepared and better able to deliver advisory services, business coaching services. So in the same way that you had to learn the tax skills you needed to be in practice, other accountants with different qualifications need to learn the business advisory skills that almost come naturally to you as a CIMA qualified accountant. None of us are born or qualified the perfect accountant to be able to do everything.
No, I wouldn't know what the perfect accountant was if they bumped into me, to be perfectly honest. I don't know, but I think, Mark, to take you up on that, I think it's the blend that's really important. Yeah. I now have met a lot of people who've worked on both sides, because having worked in industry, apart from the training, having worked in industry gives us that ability to see things through the eyes of some of our clients. And you know, use the word empathy a lot, but I think empathy is missing from a lot of accountants. And if you've worked on both sides, and it's not just me, I have quite a few guys within the team who've done that as well. we're able to bring that really good blend of experience in as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, my background is marketing, but like you, I've worked client side and agency side, so supplier, and but what it does is it enables you to understand what the conversations are on the other side, and so you can really empathize, as you said, and understand what the struggles are, and also know what the conversations are. It really stops that sort of barrier, because there is a barrier, and certainly I would have suggested with accountants and clients, there's that fear, isn't there? So if you can empathize and get over that and understand where they're coming from, that's really fantastic.
Yeah, I totally agree. Look, sometimes it's just knowing how to broach the conversation. So a client will come up to you and say, I need a set of accounts and I need a tax return. And they can form that question very easily because the taxman and the government tell them that's what you need to do.
Exactly.
What they won't walk up and say is, oh, and can I have a business plan and a forecast, please? Because that's essential to the sustainability of my business. Yet, if you start asking questions, almost always, I'm not trying to clarify everybody together, but they will say, I don't have enough time and I don't have enough cash. And to be honest, I thought I'd enjoy this work a lot more than I actually do. And we come back to this idea, as you can see behind me, of the 3 freedoms of having these things. But they don't necessarily come up to you and say, you're an accountant, can you help me unlock all these 3? But
Absolutely.
Start asking 3 or 4 questions, and you can soon start to peel that away. Now you can have the proper conversation with the client about what they really want. And that set of statutory accounts suddenly is not at the front of their shopping list anymore. It's more about, you're a guy who can help me get what I actually want out of this business. And I still enjoy that now. I've been having that conversation for however many years with business owners, and I still love having that conversation now, because that's where you can make an impact in my mind.
You are
absolutely.
so right. And this whole business about moving into advisory, which some people have been pushing for upwards of 15 years, with good reason. One of the big challenges for many accountants, is clients come to them because of statutory obligations. So an accountant only has to show that they are better or more appropriate or empathize better than the accountant down the road. They, as you quite rightly say, clients don't typically pitch up wanting anything else. And accountants need to develop the skills to help promote and pitch those services. You have now do that naturally. Perhaps you did right from the beginning, again, because of your background. But that's where the gap is, and why so many accountants who aspire to advisory skills and advisory services don't quite get there, because they need to close that gap in the middle. They think it's going to be the same as promoting and pitching statutory services, and it isn't.
It's not, no. But what compliance services allow you to do is build trust.
Yeah.
And any sort of advisory has to be built on trust. If I tell a business owner some insights and offer them some advice into their business, why should they believe me? Why should they on day one? What do I know? So you have to have an element of trust and compliance. We know we are still, thankfully, a very trusted sector, and working on a compliance basis with a client, in my book, is okay to build trust. As long as you understand how to build trust and why you're building trust, you can then come back and have that conversation at a later date. And so, even though I'm a huge advocate of advisory services, I'm not a guy who says advisory only. If you're not interested in advisory, I'm not interested in you. I don't go down that road either, because compliance can build trust, and that's the key word. That's what holds accountants and clients together.
I love that. That's such a great insight. So one of the questions we normally ask at this point is mistakes made, and most people say they've made a few, but what would you say, just looking at the journey and the realization and all that you've learned, what should people avoid, do you think?
Okay, didn't you say half an hour?
Yeah.
You're sharp on this, aren't I?
There are lots.
I'm going to choose one which I still cherish the learnings from every day. I'll try and be brief. In 2017, I acquired a firm. In hindsight, I acquired it for all the wrong reasons. Okay, I won't go into personal details, but I acquired it and it was a means of growing my firm. I've fast tracked to growing my firm, but the basis of the acquisition was done on all the wrong merits. And we stopped just short of the courtroom door, as the saying goes. Fast forward to 2020, and I merged with another firm. I took my firm, Price Accounting, into what is now BWP Inspire. This time, we came together based upon values and shared interests. And I can now say we've just celebrated our 5th birthday a couple of months ago. And I can now say my hindsight is enhanced by the experience of that to know what an acquisition or a merger should be based around. We came together to create the scale such that each of us as partners could specialize. And my specialism was to go into business advice. We've created that based upon a shared set of values, which enabled us to create that one culture. And I'm so happy to say, I don't mind saying it's been incredibly successful. And it's allowed me to see that the mistake of the acquisition back in 2017 wasn't because I did something wrong. It's because I went into it with the wrong attitude, the wrong approach. And all I saw was gains rather than value.
So did that mean that you hadn't done enough due diligence to, talk to the owners and make sure that you were aligned with your kind of values and your thinking? What was the mistake, do you think?
Well, okay. So I can go into more detail on this, obviously, but the value in the firm was all based around the individual practitioner. And I thought, possibly arrogantly, that if I could take those clients and then bring this extra level of advice that I can bring, then these clients would be wowed. But what I didn't really consider was the trust that he'd created, rightly or wrongly, in my opinion, but nevertheless, he had successfully navigated trust for the previous 15, 20 years or whatever. He had some very long-standing relationships with clients, and that wasn't mine to just break into. There's more detail that goes behind that as well about what is right and wrong. But here's the key thing that I take from this. It's possible to be right and wrong at the same time. You can be right in one person's eyes and wrong in another, because at the end of the day, it is largely subjective. And that's why you have to just be very true to yourself to know what you're trying to get and what your proposition is, and then try and stay consistent to that. So I am grateful. I honestly believe I'm grateful now to the learnings I got from that. But this was a mistake. Your question was, what mistakes had I made? And with the benefit of hindsight, God, that was a clanger. That was an absolute clanger that I rushed into.
A really great example. Thank you for your openness in sharing it. And on this point about being right and wrong at the same time, I'm reminded of the giant number 6 drawn on a pavement with one person standing looking at it as a number 6, another person standing at the other end looking at it, and it looks like a number 9. And they are both right because they're looking at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, it's a great analogy, Mark. Yeah, completely the same. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think you probably already told us what singles your practice out. How do you promote that and recognizing DWP could be misinterpreted as Department of Work and Pensions, but I imagine you overcome that or make light of it. But what is it that attracts new clients to the practice these days?
Well, I overcome it by telling them it's BWP, Mark. Yeah. So it's not right. But no, the trading name is Inspire. So yeah, we're okay. It's not easy opening a company called Inspire. Somebody got there before we did some time before. But look, we're no snow leopard. I don't know whether you've ever read that book. It's a great book on marketing, but we're not a snow leopard. We're not unique. I don't think we need to be unique. Correct. We're in the top X percentage
Yeah.
without being unique. And the reason I would say we're in the top percentile is dead simple. We do the basic stuff right. We have a very, very strong vision, a very powerful purpose, and then we run our business by values. We invest in our people and we understand what our value is to clients. I don't think it's much more than that. Most accountants don't really get what their value is or could be to clients. And once you put that together with the culture of your business, which is obviously driven by the values, I don't think we need much more than that. If you're looking for something just slightly more tangible, sorry, Philippa, but slightly more tangible, one thing that we do, which is, again, it's not unique, but it is probably ahead of the pack, is I used to run all the advisory within the business, whereas now we have our client managers doing it. We have managed to leverage the time away from the partners, and we have our team doing that as well, which is just a huge win. It's a huge win for the clients. They get more of it. It's a huge win for our team because they get more job satisfaction and fulfillment. And it's a huge win for the partners because we leverage our time. Not that many practices are doing that right now. So that is one difference.
You're absolutely right. And that brings us on to our last questions as regards the secrets to your success. And I want to ask you in that context, how did you transfer the knowledge or the skills from the partners so that the client managers could deliver advisory services?
Yeah, so the transfer of skills obviously comes down to training. Whenever us accountants talk about training, we instantly start talking about CPD and technical skills. But look, the skills of the new accountant, modern accountant, whatever you want to call it, there's so much more than CPD. We can't turn our back on it, but it's the softer and it's the communication skills. So we've gone through a 3-year, literally a 3-year transformation within our business to redefine roles and to train skills around those roles. And one of the keys, and if this is about other accountants maybe taking learnings on, one of the keys to our transformation is we perform facilitation roles within our clients. So you can call that a coach, you can call that a mentor, however you want to describe it. But we facilitate change within our clients and we charge them to do that. And likewise, I have brought external people in to give different perspectives and different ideas of how that can run. So we run our internal training, but we're also not afraid to bring external people in, not for CPD, but for communication and advisory based training as well. And that's what we've done the last 3 years.
That's wonderful. I often get frustrated when any accountant thinks that CPD only means technical training. It's called continuing professional development for a reason. It's not continuing technical updates or whatever. So everything you're doing there is CPD. And I always think it's important that accountants recognise that. And what you've stressed there is how crucial it is to the growth of your practice over and above the technical stuff, which of course remains important.
Yeah. And I think this is, for me, looking at everything that you've said, that is what makes you unique. I think that when it comes to accountants, it's not what they do, it's how they do it and the people behind it, which brings out that standout, which is what I'm all about, and is essentially the brand. So it's the people that bring the value and it's the approach. So, I mean, I would say that, Steve, you have a strong personality, you have strong values, you have clear kind of beliefs, and that all spills out. And I'm sure that your clients and your team and your other stakeholders really benefit from that. So that would be my lasting kind of insight from that. Mark, before we close, anything from you?
Well, I think hats off to Steve and his team. I think how the staff get develop the necessary skills is a secret that might have to wait for another time. But well done for doing that and making that transition as well.
Yeah. It's lovely. So that brings us to the end. As always, and I say this a lot now, but we could talk for hours on this. And as Steve said, we only had 30 minutes and we were just getting warmed up. But Steve, would you like to share your contact details so that our listeners can get in touch if they'd like to?
Yeah, sure. So the website is bwp-inspire.co.uk. Just about every social media tag is at BWP-Inspire. It's the same. And you can find me on LinkedIn at Steve Price Manchester. By any means, if anything today has been inspirational, then give me a shout and we'll have a chat. No problem at all.
That's very kind. Thank you. And Philippa, how can listeners find out more about you and Insight 101?
So on LinkedIn, Philippa Haynes, or go to my website, www.insight101.co.uk. And Mark, tell listeners how they can find out about your Soul Practice Club.
Yeah, on LinkedIn, I'm at Bookmark Lee. Web business card is a bookmark, naturally. Soul Practice Club is for sole practitioners running their own practices, frustrated, overwhelmed, isolated perhaps. And I actually wrote about this in my blog this week about overcoming imposter syndrome for accountants. So you can check that out as well on through my website, bookmarklee.co.uk.
Brilliant. So that's it. If you've enjoyed the Accountant Success Secrets podcast, please share the love online, subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or even YouTube, and let us have your feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. It helps to potentially broaden the reach of the podcast. And do, as we said at the beginning, contact either Philippa or myself if you would like to be interviewed on a future podcast. Many thanks again to Steve for his time today and to Philippa for making it all happen. Until next time on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast or anywhere else we might meet online or in real life, goodbye for now.
Bye.